Everybody to the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting of the 26th of July. We have apologies from Councillor Brown, Bogue and Crystal. Can I have someone move those? Councillor Price, second by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Any conflicts of interest? There being none, we'll move on. There's no public forum. Announcements by the Mayor. No further announcements. Just vote. Announcements by the Chair. I would like to acknowledge today that the People and Places Committee meeting this morning was chaired by Councillor Wright, and Councillor Wright has indicated that she will not be restanding, and I would just like to publicly acknowledge the 18 years of service that she has given to the Napier community as a councillor, on a couple of little breaks in between as you went, but 18 years of service to this community, and we congratulate you and thank you for that, and well done. Thank you very much. Are there any minor matters not on the agenda? There being none, we'll move to confirmation of minutes. The minutes of the Prosperous Napier Committee meeting held on the Thursday, the 9th of June 2022 be taken as a true and accurate record. Do I have someone to move? Councillor Crown, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Our first agenda item is the investment property portfolio review, and I imagine not Gary. Brian, welcome.
Good morning. The purpose of this report is twofold, really. One, to update Council on the financial performance of the Napier City Council's investment property portfolio, which consists of leasehold land, and also to provide a recommendation of whether to continue with our previous freeholding. So in terms of just a bit of brief background, we currently have 61 remaining leases. So the situation is where council owns the fee simple to the land, and the lessees own the improvements, and those leases are Glasgow type leases and held in perpetuity. Just in terms of the financial performance of the portfolio, and the PricewaterhouseCoopers report is attached, but I won't go into any details, but it's performed extremely well, and obviously with the advantage of the massive capital gains in land which has occurred. So just at our latest valuation, 30 June 22, puts the value of that portfolio at approximately $100 million, receive approximately just over $2 million in ground rents. The yields, in terms of the cash yields, a little bit low at the moment. It takes a while before the rent reviews catch up with the increase in land values, because the ground rent is based on land value. So no, just in summary, it has performed extremely well and outperformed various other investment indices. So Council previously was allowing the freeholding of leasehold land. We put that on hold pending because of an environment of escalating land values and very low interest rates, and we simply didn't have anywhere really to park that money as a suitable investment. So Gary, obviously his report follows this item. So this report has been before the Audit and Risk Committee, and I've got their recommendation there, which forms my office's recommendation. So in terms of the a very good investment, but there's a lot of negative sentiment out in the community with regards to leasehold land, even though the lessees know full well when they purchase the properties that they're leasehold, but there is a lot of negative sentiment there. So happy to answer any questions. So I won't go into all the financial details of the PwC report. There's a lot of detail there. They also projected forecast returns, which look very favourable. But happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions starting with Councillor Tapine.
Greetings and thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Morning, Brian. I've got two questions really. My first is around participation with Māori. So I have read all our policies and portfolio documents that you supplied with your report, and I'll preface the question around this is the direction in which Council has indicated we'd like to move in order to provide flexibility with the use of these strategic assets and provide a return to Napier. So this report comes as no surprise and is consistent with the directions of Council. Since we originally asked for this work, here comes the first question. Since we originally asked for this work, Mana Ahuriri has had settlement in that space, and while these 10 portions of land identified in the schedule are not necessarily directly connected to the settlement, in other areas with other authorities, where land has become available or under consideration, a mechanism was provided for direct engagement with mana whenua to check any historical status with that land or to provide an opportunity to partnership around future direction. I note that our history is a little bit unique to the rest of New Zealand, and so I'm wondering, as I've gone through all these documents, there was a conspicuous absence of our networking or our partnership or our collaboration with iwi and mana whenua in the space. That's not to say it's not there, it's just that I couldn't find it in the document. So I was wondering, first question, how are we, do you see that there are opportunities in this progressing work for us to foster good relationships with mana whenua to further define or clarify cultural value in these sites? Tough question, so feel free to come back to me on it, but I'm just conspicuously concerned around the absence of reference to our Māori partners.
If I can speak through the chair. Mōrehu te tomo tēnei te paupakara o te kaunihiro Ahuriri. With regards to the your question, Councillor Tapine, we are in seek of always looking to engage with mana Ahuriri. In respect of they've only just settled, and as of 3rd of March, they've only just really came into the game. So there is a lot to do, and they understand the process of what is needed. Unfortunately for them, at the moment, with the lack of resource, it is a little bit slow, and but we will and we are engaging with mana Ahuriri as we go through every page of everything that needs to happen with them in engagement. That answers your question.
Supplementary to that, Mr. Chair, if I may. So thank you for that, Morihu. That does provide a little bit of clarity for me, and I absolutely appreciate that mana Ahuriri have recently settled and they'll be flat out on the ground trying to work things out and build new strategies and plans. In the interim, however, you said that that will mean that they will be late to the game. If you're late to the game and you think you could have been a key component to scoring a try somewhere in that process, the sense of loss is much greater. So what I'm saying is, despite how busy they are and despite that they're focused on those things which are a priority for mana Ahuriri, I don't want them to miss out on an opportunity to build partnership, to engage in conversation around land parcels that they've never had the historical opportunity to participate in. So, yep, sure, being late to the game is completely understandable, but that does not remove our onus to ensure we meet our obligations with regards to enabling participation and engaging with Māori in this space. So, my question now is directed to you. Confidence. How's your confidence around ensuring that we keep our partners informed? And do you feel you've covered all the necessary bases? I am aware there are only 10 properties here, but most of them were underwater at one point. So just looking for some confidence from the Office of the Pouwhakarai or from the SLT team around how we're maintaining good comms with our mana whenua, our seven hapu and mana Ahuriri. Kia ora.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Tapine. Sorry?
I'm just wondering, Morohu, if I can just share what my understanding is of how the two are linked. And I think it's probably fair to say that the settlement process would have considered those matters that needed to be considered as part of that settlement. And our investment portfolio is no different to anybody else's investment portfolio. And there is no obligation necessarily to have to or to engage in discussions with Mana Ahuriri and their settlement, which is completely discrete from ours. So that does not mean that we don't want to work with them on matters of where there are mutual interests, but that is not to say either that we need to progress every single bit of investment portfolio in discussions with them, because they're not the same, and that they wouldn't do that with us either from their side. Okay?
Yeah,
Supplementary. So thank you, Richard. That was a great explanation. I'm just, while I recognise there are some obligations and that those two processes are completely separate, and I'm encouraged by your indication that you will continue to look for opportunities to work with iwi in this space. I would just point out that with regards to settlement processes, that they can only negotiate and discuss those things that are on the table at the time. These properties would not have been on the table at the time of their settlement negotiations. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because while we're looking to change how we service and operate and use these particular assets, there is a corresponding opportunity to strengthen partnerships in a new space with mana whenua. And I'm pretty sure, but I'll need you to clarify, please, Richard. I'm pretty sure that it is our intention at an operational level and a strategic level to continue to work with mana whenua in this space. Could you just confirm for me that is, even if that means we don't have a supporting policy which deliberately or specifically enactions that, it is our intention to foster those partnerships? Could you give me some confidence around that, please?
What I'd like to do is just answer that by trying to distinguish between an operational part or a functional matter of council and a relationship matter. The two are not necessarily always joined. So we have many parts of the operation where we don't, of the council operation, that we don't engage directly with Mana Ahuriri on, because there's no requirement to do so. And that's probably the best way to have a look at the investment portfolio. If there was a legal requirement to do so, we would do so. Their settlement has gone through historic claims and has been worked through on that basis, and that would have considered any relevant property. So it's not like there is new ones to be considered. That is part of the settlement process. So the two are quite just kind of discrete. And if there are reasons for us to come together on the relationship issue, of course we would pursue that. They are partners for us, but they are not investment partners. So that's probably, if that explains it. I'm happy to perhaps talk to you further offline about how that would work, or where we would engage with Mana Ahuriri on the investments side, if at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will take that conversation offline. I am interested in identifying a little bit more around whether or not we're obligated or whether or not we're seeking opportunities. So thank you for that, Richard. My second question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Is it relevant to the actual paper in that we are discussing receiving the report and resolving to continue or resume rather than continue, resume the sale of non-strategic land?
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay.
That's right. So there are some statements in the report which refer to, and I think the term is difficult to substitute. So we were looking to make some changes and transitions in this space. I'm not too sure who will answer this question. And one of the directions from council was, yes, we want to free up freehold land and make economic opportunities available. Consequently, however, this is connected to revenue that comes into council to supplement the costs of operation. In the report, it speaks about it's going to be really challenging to find a replacement for that revenue and difficult to substitute. So have we got, based on the information in front of us, is it still prudent for us to continue down this line, or do we have alternatives for the substitute of revenue with regards to what's connected to this paper?
I'll probably answer that question.
Okay, so it's probably
So I think-
an appropriate time that I should introduce our Jessica Allen, who's been seconded from the Regional Council to assist us. And yes, welcome, Jessica, and we'll let you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning. So I think, yes, Brian did mention when he introduced the paper that the investment policy that follows this paper does supplement the paper effectively by supporting the revenue for investment of the freeholding of the properties. So that does support the reinvestment of funds for reinvestment or to produce income. So that paper does follow this paper, which does support the reinvestment of funds to produce revenue. So, yes, I think that does effectively answer that question.
Yeah, that was the comment I was going to make, that the second paper that we deal
They
with
effectively
today
are packaged
is
together.
the investment policy review, so they are intertwined and interlinked. And we have obviously been for some time trying to establish the replacement investment to take this place.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You all right? Councillor Price.
Probably just a little follow-on from Councillor Tapani. The income from the strategic land that we want to keep is a lot higher than that's non-strategic. You know what I mean? We've got a total return. If your non-strategic doesn't earn as much as strategic, would that be correct?
Well, not necessarily. The ground rents, in terms of the rent, the cash rent coming in, is based on a percentage of land value. So obviously if the land value's lower, so it's all relative in that sense. There would be some high-value properties along West Quay, for instance, where the potential for capital gain, probably forever and a day, would be far greater. But no, we haven't really divided it up between strategic and non-strategic in terms of dividing the revenue up. We'll consider every freeholding request on a case-by-case basis, and as I said in the report initially, a report from officers will go to the Audit and Risk Committee, who will make a recommendation to the Prosperous Napier Committee, who will then make a recommendation to the full committee. So there's quite a process to go through in determining which ones to freehold and which ones not to.
So you probably missed my point a little bit, and what I'm trying to say is there's different values in different blocks of land. That if you sold probably less valued land, it's not going to affect the return. As if you sold half and half, you know, anyone get what I'm getting at? Is
Well, yeah, all I can say is we'll look at it at a case-by-case basis, and
Yeah.
in terms of determining strategic nature, it's both location and whether there would be any benefit in council acquiring the lessee's interest in that, and also it's looking at it property as an investment, as strategic as an investment, so that'll all be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
I think there's an important component here that needs to be identified, and that is the case-by-case basis. And it can answer partly your question, but it can also answer Councillor Tapani's question, that when it is considered on a case-by-case basis, then the cultural aspect can also be considered in the case-by-case aspect.
yeah, I'm not.
Not ready yet?
I haven't quite got. So the strategic land is worth more than the non-strategic. Would that be right?
Well,
Case by case, I suppose. Well, we've selected what's strategic and what's not, haven't we?
Well, there's a framework, so we've got to work through, there is an adopted framework that we work through to determine strategic versus non-strategic. So as I say, we've got to work through those on a case-by-case basis.
If I may, through the chair, just I think what you're trying to speak to, Councillor Price, is there may well be an alignment with land value and it being strategic versus non-strategic. So the revenue lost through the sale of non-strategic properties may not impact as much as that from strategic properties.
Right on.
There you go.
Right, moving on. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you. I think the previous conversation has probably answered in part what I was looking for. In reading the PwC report, I was just looking for some confidence that the case-by-case approach is not going to lead us into a situation where we're making decisions on the already identified strategic properties. That understanding is correct, isn't it?
That is my understanding. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that framework, and I think we can go back to probably somewhere around 2015 or somewhere there, where we spent a considerable time working through identifying the framework as to what was strategic and non-strategic.
And receiving this revised or this new report is not proposing to change any of the modelling that we did in that original piece. Through you, Mr. Chair, the only other thing that sort of raised a little bit of a flag for me was in the executive summary, they talk about the portfolio receiving a generally low return of around 3%. Is it talking specifically around capital increases in the portfolio at that stage? Because I understood our return across the portfolio, including income and capital, was far greater than 3%.
Through the chair, yes, the 3% is purely the cash rental coming in divided by the value of the portfolio. So that is relatively low at the moment because of the high land values. And as I said before, there is a lag. Like the ground rents are based on a percentage of land value, and as land value escalates, there's a time lag between the rent renewals. So where it referred to a relatively low return, it was talking about the actual rent, the ground rent. But if you take, like any investment, includes both, whether it be dividends or interest or whatever, the cash return plus capital gain, then it's a very, very good investment. It has performed extremely well.
Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any further questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that we resolve to receive the report prepared by PricewaterhouseCoopers, reviewing the Napier City Council's investment property portfolio, that we resolve that Council continue to allow the freeholding of non-strategic land on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the investment property portfolio policy, noting that Council's amended investment policy has now been completed and suitable alternative investment opportunities have been identified for Council's consideration. Do I have a mover? Happy to move the Mayor, and Councillor Simpson second. You'd like to speak?
Thank
Mayor
you.
Wise?
Thank you very much, through the Chair. And I'm really pleased to see this paper come to us today. We obviously pressed pause on the sale of non-strategic land because we did want to take the time to ensure that we identified some alternative investment opportunities. But I firmly believe that we do have some non-strategic land within our portfolio, that the benefits of selling those would be good for Council, for ratepayers and for the people, businesses and organisations that are currently leasing those properties. And now we're in a situation where we can assess those on a case-by-case basis. We've got a very, very clear framework of how to do that and work through that, and then use those funds to consider alternative investments. So I support the recommendations in front of us today.
Councillor Simpson, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
Only to reinforce what Her Worship has said. I think the reporting has informs us very well about both our position and our future opportunities. So I think, congratulations to the report drafters. They've kept it reasonably simple. And yeah, I'm more than happy to support the activity.
Do we have anybody else, any other councillors who wish to comment? I'll put the officer's recommendation as in the paper, A, B and C. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. And we move to the second item, which is the investment policy review, which is obviously interlinked. And Gary. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So just first off, I apologise in advance if I sort of lapse into any jargon around this. It can be a little bit technical sometimes. So the investment property policy adopted in 2018 set the requirement for a suitable investment policy to be created prior to the sale of any leasehold land, as has just been discussed by Brian. Review of the investment policy has been primarily driven by that requirement. I'd also like to note that the policy and SIPO were presented to Audit and Risk in late June. So there's been a significant reworking of the policy. So key changes include the purpose for holding strategic investments has been expanded to include cultural benefits and providing specific examples of strategic assets. Creating a distinction in the policy between the risk appetites for different asset classes rather than being risk averse for all asset classes. A more logical flow is introduced to the policy that creates a clear introduction, detail of what council can invest in, and a subset of rules for each of those investments. Particularly for Treasury investments, definitions have now been included and investment limits have been replaced with investment guides. And that's to prevent adverse investment events occurring where council is required to prioritise investment limits over cash flow and funding needs. So a separate statement of investment policies and objectives, a SIPO, has been introduced to manage funds received from the sale of leasehold property. This approach was taken to keep the investment policy simpler, because the proposed SIPO is over 20 pages long, and to allow potentially conflicting investment rules to exist. So a copy of the draft SIPO has been included for your review. It's quite granular compared to the investment policy. So the SIPO introduces new allowable asset types and additional roles for the management of any portfolio invested under this SIPO. So I'll take the rest of the report as read.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably a real easy question for you, Gary. So 3.2 of the, section 3.2 of the SIPO, it's on page 66 of our agenda. I see there are two bullet points at the bottom. One is to review the SIPO annually, and the other is to formally review the SIPO every 3 years. So I'm just wondering, well, what is the reason for that? In my mind, I was wondering, would that annual review actually take place at audit and risk level with a recommendation or report to come with us, or it just seemed with a long-term investment view, an annual review? Just wondering about that.
Through the chair, that's a really good question. So typically an annual review would occur just to make sure things are running the way they should. And so from a risk perspective, audit and risk should certainly be involved as part of that. So essentially it is looking at the last 12 months and saying, has all the duties and responsibilities been performed as appropriate to the stated SIPO. And it's not so much on an asset allocation basis. We can look at that, but typically an investment strategy is a long-term view, so it shouldn't change much in any given year. But sometimes we do have events during that year that would potentially trigger a review. For instance, if we've got a significant downturn in the market, or there's some, say for instance there's a volcanic eruption in New Zealand or something that would impact on that portfolio, then a review of our investments is sort of warranted under that. But yeah, typically it is the case that yes, asset allocation would be reviewed on a longer term basis and not every year. It's really just a health check of the portfolio and processes.
Any further questions? Councillor Tapani.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So follow on, same page 66, please, and by consequence a reference to 37 as well. So as the Chair pointed out, some of my questions on the previous paper might be better placed here in this space. So with regards to number 3 on page 66, around the structure there, where do you envisage Te Waka Rangapu fitting within that flow, or do they fit? And this sort of leads back to my question around how our strategic investments might involve opportunities to form stronger partnerships with mana whenua. So, and I just notice it would be difficult as a person in that position to be able to find a pathway in. So do you see Te Waka Rangapu, the Office of Te Waka Rangapu, holding a role within this process at some point?
Through the chair, yep, there's a really easy answer to that. If you go back a couple of pages to section 2.5, so typically within that, socially responsible investing means different things to different people, and it can be quite a broad scope. So one of the first things we'd be looking at is minimal harm to people, environment through our portfolio. But another one also is just a cultural basis of what this means to different people within our community, and so that at the very foundational level is where they would be involved in that process. So with the SIPO, all it is doing is just saying, hey, we're looking to create an investment portfolio. This is the structure it would operate within, but it doesn't actually say what those investments would be. And so there would certainly be consultation on that basis.
Cool bananas. Okay, so even though it doesn't specifically talks about, okay, we'll move on to another one. 37, summary of key changes. Could you give me a little bit more of an understanding on cultural benefits? You sort of alluded to it in your previous answer. What does that mean, please?
Okay, sorry. Because I've got individual reports here.
37, first bullet point under summary of key changes.
Key changes.
Okay, sorry, just give me a moment to read through that. Okay, so through the chair. So I haven't actually defined specifically what cultural benefits would be, but this again is a lens that council would put over any investment decisions that are made in that space. So typically when it comes to things such as treasury, cash and term deposits, there's no great difference between cash and term deposits from bank to bank, but where we are expanding into certain other areas such as property or other investments like that, one of the factors that can be considered is the benefit to the community on a cultural basis. So it may be things such as significant land, traditional land, that sort of thing can be considered as an investment opportunity on that basis. So where we determine as a council what those benefits may be, if it does tick a cultural box on that space, then we can actually consider it, rather than just cold, hard investments of generating a return.
Last question is supplementary, if I may, Mr. Chair. So this is, I'm asking for your advice, your opinion on something here now. And so even though such things as those types of opportunities to engage with key portions of our community are not specifically articulated in these documents, do you have confidence that there's sufficient scope within supporting documents or policies to provide yourself and other staff members with the necessary lead indicators to engage with those groups on these matters?
Through the chair, I do believe there are. So, for instance, when it comes to any significant decision on purchasing an asset, an investment and otherwise, that would typically go through council. So that's up to the councillors to help make that decision. And so it starts on that basis. And so if it fails at that level, then we would have to pick it up again at the officer level. But typically, it is something that flows through the entire process. So yourself as a councillor asking these questions around our investment decisions is the very first step in that.
Thank you very much.
I'd just add that there are a number of committees that any major investment would need to move through before the council actually makes that investment. So I think there's a lot of cultural checkpoints as we move through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the checks and balances. I was looking for proactive opportunities.
Yes, and I'd invite Jessica to make a comment on that.
Yeah, just in response to that line of questioning, I guess that the investment policy in the SIPO is a governing document of council. It's a live document and can be updated at any time. It is for the committee and for council to give guidance to staff and to officers in terms of the objectives of the investment policy and the strategy of council. If one of the objectives of council and the committee is to include cultural objectives in the investment strategy, then it is of council and the committee's, priorities to give that guidance to staff. The objectives of the policy don't directly kind of give that instruction currently. So I think if that is the wish or the guidance of the committee, then that probably does need to be yeah, we probably do need more, we do need stronger direction in terms of giving that guidance. That's my view in terms of this policy as it stands right now. The objectives don't currently directly give strong direction in terms of giving, there's not a strong objective around, they do primarily give stronger direction around investment objectives primarily. So,
Thank you,
would
Mr.
need
Chair,
that
and staff
guidance.
for addressing my question.
Okay. All right. Any further questions or comment? So the officer's recommendation is that this committee approve the amended investment policy as presented, approve in principle a draft copy of the Statement of Investment Policies and Objectives, and note that agreement on risk appetite for the Statement of Investment Policies and Objectives and a portfolio distribution policy must be established by Council prior to the adoption of the Statement of Investment Policies and Objectives. I have a mover. Councillor Tapner, were you moving that?
Yes, I'm happy to move.
And a seconder, Councillor Crown. You'd like to speak to it?
Only that this is another indicator of a long piece of work, long-standing, and I'm looking forward to other opportunities to reinforce and bolster it. Ngā mihi nui.
Councillor Crown, do you want to speak now or reserve?
I'm happy to speak now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, just to acknowledge the staff who have put these policies together. I know that this has been a hell of a lot of work, and I think it's a really great resource for us to have good framework. I don't think that it's limiting. It allows us to contribute further provision and add further provision if so agreed to by council, if our objectives, purposes, etc. change. So it's a really good foundation for us to be able to build on. So yeah, thanks to the staff and happy to support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll put those recommendations as listed, A, B and C. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a couple of items that we need to move into public excluded. So can I have someone move a recommendation that we exclude the public? Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried.